Well, welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon. It's great to have you all here with us, and we're really excited to be talking about skills-based approaches to solve workforce challenges. Before we begin, I just wanted to provide a couple of housekeeping items. So first, due to the high number of participants we're expecting today, all attendees have been muted. During our Q&A session later, if you would like to unmute and ask a question, please just go ahead and raise your hand and one of us will unmute you so that you're able to ask that question. We also invite you to use the chat to ask any questions that you might have, and feel free to drop those into the chat throughout the presentation. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded and you can find it on ACCE's website. It will be posted sometime later this week. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our panel for today. I'm going to start with Jacob Vigil, and he's the Senior Manager of Employer Initiatives at Skillful, which is a Markle initiative. He leads a team that is working to bring the future of skills to the future of work to create a more equitable and sustainable economy for all. Before joining the Skillful team, Jacob worked at Emily Griffith Technical College, where he developed a career services department focused on student sustainability and employer partnership development. Today, we're also featuring Trevor Pruitt, who is the Manager of Employer Initiatives at Skillful. Trevor leads the development and deployment of the Skillful Talent Series, a training series for employers, teaching them to use skills-based hiring to help them attract, hire, and retain talent. Trevor brings a passion for inclusion and equity to the work at Skillful, striving to build an economy that works for everyone. And then finally today, we have Corine Waldau, who is the Senior Director of Economic Vitality at the Boulder Chamber. Corine brings a background in managing stakeholder-driven organizations and economic development, with over 15 years experience in nonprofit organization management, member services, event planning, marketing, research, communications, and strategic planning. Currently, Corine also serves as the board chair for Workforce Boulder County. So with that, I'd actually like to turn it over to Ryan Kelsey, who's the Executive Director of Partnership Development at Markle Foundation, and he's going to kick us off. So Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Amy. And thanks to all the ACCE team for inviting the Markle team and our friends from the Boulder Chamber to come today to share the information that we have. I have a very simple job, which is to just tell you a minute about Markle and pass things off to the experts that are with me that you just heard that were introduced a moment ago. So, today's session is about why skills-based practices matter and how we're going to, if we can apply a skills-based approach to hiring and talent management, we'll be able to solve a lot of workforce challenges. There's a quick slide here next. It'll just tell you a little bit about the agenda for how this is going to work. We're almost done with the first part, welcome and introductions. My colleague Jacob's going to talk a little bit about the Rework America Alliance, and quickly we'll be passing things to Trevor to talk about what's going on with skills-based practices and what you can all do to help support them with your constituents. And then importantly, we have our friends from the Boulder Chamber, Corine, to talk to you as a peer about what it's been like for them as a key partner to us in Colorado. I think, we can just go to the next one, Trevor. Just to tell you a bit about Markle, we're a foundation with headquarters in New York, but we have terrific teams in Colorado, Indiana, and DC, and some other folks spread around thanks to the remote working environment that we're all in these days. And we've been working in this space since about 2013 on workforce and economic opportunity. Particularly, we're aiming at the segment of the population that does not have a bachelor degree, and particularly communities of color, and helping them to move into good jobs in the digital economy. And our feeling is that in order to do that, we need to build coalitions of different kinds of actors. So that's folks working in government, worker serving or worker facing organizations, people serving in coaching and career navigation spaces and training spaces. And then the group that you're all representing, which is groups of employers, play a really key role in making this all work for us. So we're excited to share with you what we've learned so far and where we're headed. And hoping to gauge your interest in even helping us out going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jacob, to take it from here. Go for it, Jacob.
Thanks, Ryan. Just to get us started, I want to talk a little bit about how the Rework America Alliance came to be. After the events of last year, the pandemic, and of course the civil unrest, we knew we needed to prioritize our focus. So in August of 2020, we launched what we call the Rework America Alliance. It's essentially a collaboration of employers, nonprofits, educators, government entities, public and private organizations. The Alliance's goals is narrowly focused on helping millions of workers who have been displaced during the pandemic, particularly those of color and those without a 4-year degree, and helping them get into quality jobs. We're doing this by identifying promising job pathways for workers to pursue, identifying high quality training programs aligned to skills needed for emerging jobs, developing digital tools to help better serve displaced workers, and directly engaging employers to drive adoption of inclusive skills-based practices, and developing tools to help them take immediate action. Next slide. So the Alliance isn't possible without the partners such as our civic organizations, such as the National Urban League, Unidos US, and the National Partnership for Women and Families. We've also partnered with multiple large employers, such as Walmart, Microsoft, McKinsey, Boeing, Google, and Workday, to name a few. With that being said, we don't want to repeat what happened in the last recovery. Next slide. We don't want to repeat what happened in the next recovery, which happened after the recession of 2008. I'm sure some of you were around for, but essentially what we don't want to happen is that we don't want to fall back into what we call pedigree-based talent strategies, which is called degree inflation. This is a practice of using degrees as a proxy for skills on job descriptions when a degree isn't actually needed to acquire or perform that job. Executive assistance is one of these examples you'll see on here in this graph. It's a great example of showing when we do a quick data pull from our partners at MZ, we can see that, and we pulled this for Colorado. I do want to say this, I started pulling just randomly for other states. This data that we're showing right here is actually very similar and in some places almost identical data. But essentially we can see in Colorado last month, 75% of executive assistant job postings were requiring a 4-year degree. However, only 20% of people who actually have that job title actually have a 4-year degree. That's what we mean when we say degree inflation. This collective approach locked millions of good jobs, people out of good jobs, and left companies competing for a very narrow set of workers. So we don't want to fall back into that. With that being said, next slide, Trevor. Today, we're going to really focus on the core challenges in our current labor market. I know you all are muted, but we wanted to just throw out a discussion question right here, and feel free to respond in the chat. But what are the current challenges in your local market? And what have you heard from your local business community? Feel free to take a second to throw that in the chat, your responses. And as you're doing that, I'll focus on kind of high level what we're gonna tackle today and go over. But essentially, there's a struggle to fill positions with people with the right skills. There's an increasing economic change and crisis that's going on right now, and of course, there's rising inequities amongst workers. So we're going to really focus in and dive into how can we have an impact on those. And I'll give us a second. I see some people are adding in. Shortage of employees, struggling to find employees for very specific industries such as restaurant and hotel, additional federal funds. Yeah. Incentivized unemployment benefits. That's not paid to go back to work. we've heard that across the nation. Workforce shortage, particularly childcare and hospitality, lack of childcare, not enough people to hire openings. Yeah, great. These are all great answers. What I will say is across the board, we've heard very similar feedback from local communities in Colorado, in Indiana, across the nation. So I just wanted to preface that you're not alone with these same challenges. So keeping these in mind, we're going to now focus on how a skills-based approach can actually help solve some of these challenges that you all have commented on, and more specifically on what I just mentioned. So next slide. So what are inclusive skills-based practices? I'm sure as I teed that up, a lot of people were saying, well, we don't understand what that is. It means focusing on specific skills needed to succeed in a job throughout an employee's life cycle. In particular, this means rather than relying on education, credentials, past experience, it means recognizing one's knowledge and abilities regardless of where it is acquired. Since this approach requires focusing on skills throughout a worker's entire life cycle, the Markle employer team has actually built a 4-part employer training series that focuses on decreasing bias and increasing diversity. And we do this through specific action-oriented trainings on skills-based job postings, candidate evaluation, think of candidate evaluation as interviewing, selection and onboarding, and we bring it full circle with retention and upskilling. And that's the 4-part series that you see in the right side of this slide. The way we currently deploy these trainings are through intermediary partners such as the local chambers. We actually work with multiple chambers throughout Colorado, and obviously Corine will speak to the work that they're doing in Boulder. But we also partner with local small business development centers, workforce systems, economic developers, and community-based nonprofits in order to deploy these tools and resources throughout communities. The goal of these trainings is to get tactical and move from intent to action. That's what we've designed them around, is to actually have something where you can leave the training and take action almost immediately. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Trevor Pruitt, to do a deep dive on what skills-based hiring is and how it helps positively impact our communities and the current market challenges we're facing. Trevor, if you want to take it over.
Yep. Thanks so much, Jacob. So how we're going to kind of talk about these concepts is both thinking from the point of view of a business, but also our community at large. And so think about whatever community you're looking to serve. And we're going to start kind of having a discussion about these practices in practice. What does it mean for a business? What does it mean for filling some of these positions, overcoming some of these challenges that you've all talked about in the chat? So we'll give you kind of an introduction to this first Skillful Talent Series 101, talk about job descriptions, job postings, and we'll make them relevant to the challenges that you're all experiencing. And then I'll turn it over to Corine to talk about how she's done and how she's led a lot of this work in her local area. Then talk about some opportunities for you to partner with us and potentially ACCE in using some of these approaches. So with that, we're going to have another opportunity for participation. And I want to get your sense of what your answers to this question is. What does it mean to use skills-based hiring? Where are your current understandings of this concept? Throw in chat any thoughts that you have about this kind of, what does it mean to use skills-based hiring? Hands-on learning, says Karen. Yeah, it's definitely applicable as we talk about some kind of long-term workforce solutions that I'll get to towards the end of my little spiel. Listing specific skills, hiring based on skills rather than educational experience. Yeah, matching employee competencies to jobs as opposed to resume and pedigree. You're hitting on a lot of like key points, transferable skills. Yeah, this is great. this is going to cover the first 2 bullets that I'll introduce. I'll give you some time to guess what the third one is. No one's said that one yet. So I'll walk through this, keep on guessing, see if you can get the third piece before I get there. First one is really to move away from credential requirements when possible. And so this is both not just education as a hiring criteria, but also work experience and sometimes certifications. In some cases, like if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my biggest employer is the hospital system, we're not saying that you remove credentials in jobs that truly require one. And so clinical healthcare roles are one of those examples, but as Jacob showed some data, manager positions, executive assistants, software developers, a lot of these positions are using those credentials as the main criteria for someone's qualified for those jobs or not. And also using things like work experience in addition to that to sort through candidates rapidly. So this is going to come up with some key ways that businesses in your communities are adding to the challenges that we're trying to address with all the things that are going on in our economy. So this gets to another point that a lot of you brought up. No one's gotten the third one yet, so please keep guessing. Using competencies specific to the job. And so this gets into this idea of skills training, transferable skills, matching position with competencies. A lot of you already called this out. So the key here is that we want to focus on the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the kind of main components of what a competency is, and align our job with describing it and also hiring and developing people for those specific competencies. And so even if we're using let's say a nursing position that requires a degree in a hospital system, we still want to blend in these competencies to make sure that we're finding the most qualified, the best candidate for that role based on their skill set. And this is challenging a lot of kind of cultural fit approaches that businesses in your area might be using now. And so we're really honing in on what makes someone successful in doing this job. And we're going to talk about the impact of all of this in 1 second. Any last guesses on the third one? All right, this gets to this idea of rising inequalities in our economy. We also really want to encourage businesses to reduce bias in their hiring process. Now, focus on competencies is going to have that impact. In our state of Colorado, white Coloradans are 2.2 times more likely to earn a bachelor's degree than their Black, Indigenous, and Latinx counterparts due to socioeconomic inequalities in our educational system. So we're helping broaden that talent pool already, but we also want to be very intentional about reducing the bias in our hiring process. And we'll talk about the impact that this is having and showing that there's a lot of opportunity already for businesses to hire more inclusively with their local talent. And so a strategy of reducing bias is key in this hiring process. Cool. So we're going to talk about how this gets integrated into the job postings. And again, we're going to not just talk about the business, the impact on the business, but the impact on our communities overall. So think about from both angles. You might think about it from you as a chamber hiring people. I know Corine has some great stories about that, to your business partners hiring people, but also the impact on people looking for opportunity in your area. How do we create a solution that really thinks about all of the interests and all of the needs for people in our local communities? So get ready to participate again in a sec, but I wanted to introduce these kind of main competency concepts. So we're going to take this broad concept of our skills-based hiring that we have some pretty good foundational knowledge on already and apply it to our job description here. So we're going to move away from the use of credentials as main hiring criteria. Not to say that credentials aren't helpful in knowing if somebody has the competencies, but broadening it from that assumption that that's the only way you gain those competencies. So explicit use of competencies on job postings, on job descriptions as our core criteria to hire. Getting down to the second point that we're trying to move away from is that oftentimes people are rushed to get a job description, right? All of you said we're dealing with a lack of people applying for jobs. So we have this kind of desperation to fill positions. And so we often spend a little time on our job postings and job descriptions, writing everything down really quickly. Oh, hey, this would be really great to have. This would be really great to have. And there's a lack of specificity. And I call this idea kind of suggestive of skills. And we'll take a look at this in a sec. And we really want to distinguish clearly what are the competencies we're looking for, what they mean for the job, and what are the most crucial ones for someone to be successful, and where there might be opportunities for training or that additional, helpful competencies, and making clear distinctions on our job postings. And then, of course, just like our third bullet in the previous slide, really moving away from unintentional or sometimes intentional biases that appear on our job posting. I like to pick on the tech community a lot with, being a Scrum ninja or other terms that have a lot of masculine and youth bias to them. But this happens a lot when we're just writing job postings fast. And cultural bias is kind of a key here in the ways that we write job descriptions and job postings. And so we want to make very inclusive job postings that highlight what is really needed to be successful without adding all of that fluffy stuff. And we'll take a look at an example. Everyone ready to participate again? Get some thoughts going. All right, so on the next slide, I'm going to show an example of a recruiter position. We're only going to be looking at the qualifications of a traditional job posting for a recruiter. What I want you all to do is think about, what's my first impression of this? What's the impact to my business's ability to recruit using a position like this? What is the impact on my local talent who's looking for opportunities using a position like this? So let's take a look at this traditional job posting on the left here. These are qualifications. What is your impression about this? What impact do these qualifications have? Generic, but also very specific, only wanting, people of a certain educational status. We make people feel underqualified. Amy, can you expand on what you mean by what about this posting is making people feel underqualified? Definitely some exclusion with the types of educational experience. Education more important than skills, says Suzanne. Why does it need a BA? Yeah, there's an assumption that not only does anyone not with a 4-year degree not capable of it, but it's like this generic, well, as long as you have one, you can be successful. Yeah, kind of assumption that people can't learn or that people don't have the transferable skills. All right, these are great points. What impact is this making to our local economy? Why should we as chambers and other community-based organizations care about our businesses writing postings like this? No economic mobility. That's a great comment. Yeah. This posting is limiting economic mobility a whole lot for local people, and that's hurting not just people who are looking for new opportunities, but our business community as well. And so I'm going to talk about some of the impact that this is making. Yeah, so leaving people behind, preventing people from applying who might be able to do the job. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so the bachelor's degree, 46% of people in this position don't have one. We know that this is not a true requirement like with a nursing position. Minimum of 1-year experience. This gets back to somebody up above, who's saying about transferable skills. That automatically limits anyone with transferable skills. Maybe a hiring manager who's been involved in the hiring process before on the other side, not as a recruiter, but understands the skills that are needed for this position. And then there's a lot of lack of clarity. And this is really important as we think about kind of our community too, is I know employers a lot and kind of talking about this idea of the skills gap will be like, I'm just waiting for education to come in here and train people with the skills. And you're looking at their job postings and you're like, what skills are those? There's Workday and then ATS, but how would a professor or somebody at community college or someone at a training organization know what they're really training on with words like friendly, tactful, and good negotiator? And so it doesn't just harm the business by communicating this way, because they're not communicating clearly to the educational programs, high school, community college, 4-year degrees, training organizations, but it's also a lack of communication to the folks looking at this job. What really are you looking for? And then there's things like energetic, confident go-getter that really incorporate a lot of bias into this process, that really start making our companies very in-grouped culturally. Because the way that hiring managers will look for energetic, confident go-getter is, you're energetic like me. You're a confident go-getter like me. And this is, a fancy term called idiosyncratic rater effect that essentially means we look for people like us, the ways that we do things. And so people, immigrants to our communities, or other folks from different cultural backgrounds, for instance, disabled people in our communities might have a lot of barriers with these types of biases in our job postings. All right, that's enough for me. Let's take a look at what a skills-based version of this looks like and get your impressions about that. Again, answering not just the impact on our business, but the people in our communities and our community at large. So there's the skills-based approach compared to our pedigree-based approach. Yep, your comments is exactly on point. People can self-select if they can do a job or not way easier by having this clarity. Acquire competencies. Yeah, Richard, I'm curious to connect what you're saying with the recruit from a tiny pool. Can you be a little clear on what's driving that impact? Amy stealing from Bryant there. Yeah, some preferred, in addition to some of the required competencies, making very explicit what is very needed versus what could be potentially trained. We go into that determination much more in depth in our full Skillful Talent series. Makes the employer look more inviting to, like that clarity for the job is really important. And that actually impacts retention a huge amount. We'll look at some stats on that really shortly. Yeah, community members can share that they know these skills, can identify better fit for these skill sets. So spot on, right? So this is really I'll talk a little bit about kind of this community impact that this makes, but really broaden who can be qualified for this job, who can apply for this job, not taking away who really can actually, not taking away from the quality of applicants that we're getting in this process. So we're looking at really what is really needed to do the job, rather than these things like the bachelor's degree and the 1-year experience and whatnot. I'll expand on this as we think more broadly in our communities and whatnot. So let's take some look at the impact on our companies first, though. So here are some stats that we've found with organizations that have adopted a skills-based approach. So across the board, we're seeing improvements. And we have examples from private and public companies. Corine will probably share potentially about their work with the county government, but we see huge impact both on our local businesses and our local governments who are trying to hire in this economy. So Swiss Log, a couple things to note: double ethnic diversity. They went actually from 10 to 27% in racial diversity in who they hired without any DEI initiatives, except for their change to skills-based hiring. So that's a massive impact on the ways that we look at people. That's how much bias impacts diverse candidates, particularly across race, to get opportunities in our local economy. 65% reduction in turnover. This is because of that clarity of the job, and also a better onboarding process when we recognize people's skills and what they bring. And so that's a lot less turnover impacting our companies. We know that that's one of the main costs when it comes to talent acquisition, is trying to fill positions that were recently filled and making sure that people in our communities have that stable wages over time. A couple things to note also is a reduction of onboarding time. You hire somebody with the better skill match rather than assuming what skills they have coming in. You're going to spend less time onboarding them and very specific about the skills that need to be trained during that time. I want to talk again on this kind of broad struggles that we're seeing with our market challenges, and then turn it over to Corine. I just kind of talked through some of these impacts on the business, but let's talk about this in the broader community-based perspective, right? So we see the struggle for people to fill positions with people with the right skills. And kind of our message here is that businesses are putting up barriers to people who are qualified for these jobs. They're not communicating clearly. They're using requirements that are eliminating up to 80% of people in that local market who might not have that bachelor's degree. And then you add the work experience and you're looking at 90% of people in those things. So reducing barriers to qualified applicants, making sure that people can find jobs that they're qualified for, making sure that people are finding employment in their local economy, but also meaning that our businesses are finding folks who actually can do the job and not spending a whole bunch of time not being able to fill their positions. We see this increasing economic change, which then, if we're starting to put up barriers to people with transferable skills, if we see this economic fluctuation and, hey, we had a huge amount of people in hospitality that now don't have jobs, but now tech is hiring a lot of people to respond to the additional tech needs during a crisis, like we just saw, we can create for opportunities for learning and advancement, and for people to take those transferable skills and start learning to fill the skills gap. And so there's a huge opportunity for us to really be collaborative in our local economy, thinking about how people need to develop skills and the impact that that's going to make. And of course, Jacob highlighted the rising inequities among workers. This is something that Corine and I talked very early on about, the inequities in the local area between white folks and the Hispanic community. And by making sure that companies are implementing a more inclusive hiring practices and providing that advancement opportunities, we're making sure that people who've traditionally been left behind in our economy or created barriers against now have the opportunity to get good jobs, get that opportunity for advancement, which also goes to fixing all these problems around we can't find anyone to fill these jobs. Well, what are the barriers we're putting up people to actually find those jobs? And so that's something that our business communities really need to kind of think about, and to create a strategy that is more responsive to all of these different changes in our economy. So I'll talk about a little bit about how you can get involved and how we can partner with you. But first, I think it's really helpful for you to hear from Corine. So I will turn it over to you, Corine.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Ryan. So again, my name is Corine Waldau. I'm the Senior Director of Economic Vitality at the Boulder Chamber. And I've been working with Skillful and the Markle Foundation for about 4 years now. I just realized that the other day. But why? Why did the Chamber get involved in skills-based hiring? And I think we need to go back 4 years kind of to understand why. And that's that as a chamber, we started listening to our businesses as to what is the top concern you have right now. This is pre-COVID. This is pre-pandemic. And what we heard over and over and over again in our economy, and mind you, that Boulder's economy has everything from tech, aerospace, natural products, bioscience, manufacturing, outdoor industry, tourism, research, and we have a very robust economy. We heard workforce. We can't hire. There's a skills gap. Education's not providing the skills we need. We can't find solutions. We have thousands of jobs available. So as a chamber, we got involved in we got involved in an initiative what we called Boulder Together. And it was really an industry-led initiative to help find solutions to the top problems facing business, and workforce was that top problem. And as we started to create these solutions, the number one thing we found, that baseline program that we wanted to start to explore, was skills-based hiring. We're hearing businesses saying they can't find talent. They have thousands of open jobs. And then we started to explore things like, okay, you have a tech job. It's an entry-level tech job requiring 7 years of experience, a bachelor's degree, and 9 different coding languages. We have a problem. And we need to take a step back, and industry needs to be at the table in the workforce development solutions. So as a chamber, we said we need to get involved. We need to convene groups of industry. We need to come up with industry-led solutions. And those solutions are part of a full toolbox of solutions. Skills-based hiring is not the only solution we do in our community, but we see it as an essential baseline solution to a lot of the workforce development strategies that we employ. We're doing things like apprenticeships, quality internships, a lot of K through 12 career pathway programming. We're doing a lot of that, but we really continue to look at skills-based hiring as that initial program that helps businesses realize that they needed to really look at things on a skills focus. So we invested in skills-based hiring. We partnered with Skillful. We brought in our own trainer. We had Skillful. We helped develop a curriculum, that 4-part series that Jacob and Trevor identified. We trained a trainer that could train out of the chamber businesses in that 4-part series. And we invested in that. We invested in somebody that could train businesses. And because we said, who's better to train our businesses than the chamber? Who are they going to trust in a solution for businesses than a chamber? We're also the economic development arm of our local area. In some cases, it could have been the workforce center, it could be the government, but they were looking to us for solutions. So we did that. But before we even implemented the 4-part series, Trevor and Jacob know that I went around and I started talking at every meeting in town about skills-based hiring. We brought in experts, we brought in Skillful, we brought in the data to show that one stat about 78% of administrative assistant positions are requiring a BA or BS, but only 20% of our community have them. So you're telling me one of those 20% lose their job due to something? They can't get 78% of the jobs out there? Are you telling me, we started to have these conversations. We brought the data to the table and it started to open eyes. We brought a futurist to an event to talk about the future of work and the strategies we need to deploy and how business and industry need to be at the table in those workforce solutions. And so then we held our first Skillful training session and it was packed. Our first one, no problem filling that class. And then we started holding them every month. And we had no problem filling, and we had people coming back and back and back and back. And they bring their bosses because yes, the HR manager came, but they needed buy-in from their boss. And then they started saying, well, could you come into our business and do this for the entire hiring team? And we're not just talking, one kind of company. We're seeing aerospace companies. We're seeing healthcare companies. We're seeing tech companies, banks, manufacturing, and civic organizations. Our entire county changed all of their job descriptions to be skills-based hiring. The city of Boulder brought us in to train several hundred hiring managers because they wanted to change the philosophy to a skills-based hiring approach because they saw that they thought they were doing it. But once they started going through the training, it was more than just the job posting, it was the interviewing. It was when you bring somebody on in a skills-based hiring approach, am I really bringing them on and bringing them on right? And am I retaining them? And am I training them correctly? Am I promoting them? And so we started to see more and more of this. We had an engineering firm just the other day bring us in to do 50 of all their entire staff because they want to change the culture of their organization to be one that, guess what? It doesn't necessarily need to be we don't need to have a proxy of a BA or BS or a certain number of experience. What are the skills that we absolutely have to have when we bring somebody on? Who's the right candidate for this job? And what can we train to? What are those skills that we can train to as a company? And those are those conversations that I'm having with businesses. And I get this question more than anything. I've talked to a bunch of chambers and they said, well, you have a university in your town. How did you get buy-in from your university to do an initiative like this? And here's my thing. I've never said that a degree is not a valuable item. Never have I. Trevor and Jacob know this. But what I'd say to a company is, why limit yourself? Why limit yourself on the front end? Because what you're doing is you're limiting and narrowing your funnel at the front end, and you're creating inequities, and you're creating up situations where you may not even be able to get that best candidate. And by requiring that BA or BS, what skills are you asking for? What skills are you assuming that they have? And put those in the job posting. And so then I start looking at job postings, and Trevor uses this example sometimes. When I start looking at job postings for some companies, I don't know, a bunch of the chambers on here probably knows, you start looking at them and you're like, gosh, you're kind of looking for that multicolored unicorn with a green horn. Like there's only one out there and you're gonna be stealing it from another company. And that's just gonna cause some turmoil in our economy. And what we really want to do is create economic mobility, upskilling, opportunities within our community for people to enter high paying and quality jobs in our community. And so once we start having more and more of these conversations, we create these opportunities. And that's why our chamber has gotten involved, why we invested in a trainer, why we run the Skillful Training Series, why we go into companies and we do personal trainings, why we bring businesses to the table in these conversations. And I will say, part of this training, and I know Trevor showed the job posting, when you leave this training, yeah, you may not be able to implement all 4 parts, but you can leave with a usable tool and one thing that you can change that day. Maybe just one thing on a job posting, or you change your interviews that day, or maybe it's something you do in your hiring process. And I know as chambers, we want to make sure that our businesses leave any professional development or any session with something that they can do or change or an impact. And I feel like this series provides that one thing they could do or more things they could do. And we offer and we've actually evolved to allow each business a 1-hour kind of consultation time with our trainer post session. So if after you're done, you want to kind of talk through what you want to do, that's kind of evolved over the course of the time. And it's been very valuable. We have people coming back and back and back. So it is like I said, it is not the solution to the workforce development issues facing our community, but it is a baseline to all of the other solutions. And I'm going to tell 3 really cool stories. One of them is a tech manufacturing company in our area, and the HR COO has come to the training 3-4 times, and finally she said, "Can you come in and do this for our entire senior leadership? Because I need buy-in. I really want to. We're having trouble. We're struggling to bring in manufacturing. I want to do apprenticeships. I want to do all that, but I don't have buy-in." And we went in and we trained the entire senior just in the Skillful Training Series about and using the data and showing that change from a traditional job description to a skills-based hiring to a job description. And this fall, they're bringing in 2 youth apprentices because they've now shifted their mindset. And they're now seeing that, wait, you know what? We don't necessarily need to require that. We can hire based on that, and we can train to this. And we've seen a shift, and it's actually helped our apprenticeship programs. So there's a tie to the other programs and work-based learning that we're doing in our community. Another example is a tech company immediately saw an increase in the number of female applicants because I don't know about you, but if I don't qualify, if I don't have all of the qualifications on the job description, I'm not going to apply. So as you move to the required and the preferred, you're starting to see an increased number of female applicants. And then I think this is kind of a cool story. My boss, chamber, Boulder Chamber, we decided we're going to walk the walk. Economic developer. We did a skills-based hiring job description, and he comes in first day on the job. It's like, what's this skills-based hiring? And I said to him, the reason you have the job, because he doesn't have the traditional economic development experience. He doesn't have the years of experience. He doesn't have the degree in it. But we actually, because we did it based on skills, he was able to go through the entire recruitment process. So we walk the walk, and we found a really great candidate for the job and able to do that. So we've seen a lot of different opportunities in our community within different industries, different types of employers, banks, service. And really, honestly, it's been one of the greatest initiatives that we've embarked on in our workforce development program, and a great partnership with Trevor, Jacob. I just met Ryan the other day, but with Ryan, and it's been a great opportunity for us also in our community to have a leadership role. I'm on all of the school district boards talking about skills and soft skills that need to be integrated into the curriculum based on job postings, because I'm the skills-based hiring person in the community. I mean, I think I have a hat now that says that, but it's part of who we are, and it's a part of what we do. So I'm here today just to tell you the story of why the Boulder Chamber got involved and where we've gone and what the value we've seen in it. And I really think, that there's a lot of benefits to the skills-based hiring in our economy, in the workforce development programming, and a lot of key pieces as we move forward. And I think COVID has only elevated the need for it.
Cool. Thanks so much, Corine. With that, I'm going to finish this up by just talking about how we can potentially partner together. And as a foundation, we're trying to come at this with the mindset of making things as accessible to you and to increase kind of subject matter expertise on how to use a skills-based approach in your local area. And then we'll get into Q&A as I kind of show some resources that we have. So first one that I recommend is just check out this training program that we've developed. Boulder Chamber, and Corine, if you don't mind, I'll probably throw the link to you guys, is actually hosting their 101 and 102 session this Friday, and then in 2 weeks, the next two sessions. So yeah, Jacob just threw the link to Boulder Chamber down in the chat. So make sure you kind of just check out the Skillful Talent Series, see what it's about, see what you all think about it. The next one, and this is one that we really want to explore kind of partnership, and depends on all of the interest among all of you and working with, say, ACCE, is thinking about how do we make sure that we're providing an accessible way to get someone in your local area trained on how to do the Skillful Talent Series or do some of this one-on-one client work with businesses. And this is what we call the Skillful Talent Academy. We've been running in Indiana, Oklahoma, Colorado, and with some other key partners to train someone local in your area on how to run the Skillful Talent Series, just like we did with Boulder Chamber. That was kind of all the examples Corine was talking about, is having someone local in the chamber being able to do training series and work one-on-one with the businesses. And thank you so much for sharing the link that people can fill out about their interest, Amy. Would love to hear from all of you. And if you don't have capacity, does someone you work with, Corine mentioned local workforce potentially could have been the one to run it. This is something that we've done in other areas where the local workforce center or the Small Business Development Center or other folks can take on that role and partner with you with that subject matter expertise. So I'm going to show a couple just links really quick, but it is open for Q&A. So please drop your questions into chat as I just show a couple resources really quickly. So the first one is just showcasing Boulder Chamber website here. I'll hop back to this link in a sec. Coming up on this Friday, and then next Friday, not 2 weeks. You can sign up for Boulder Chamber and check out the full Skillful Talent Series. If you can't make it on Friday and are interested in still learning about the Skillful Talent Series, we have a e-learning platform that, because of our funding structure, are able to offer folks to check out the Skillful Talent Series for free. We only have the first 2 sessions on our website. So if you can't make it to Friday with Boulder Chamber, you can take the first 2 courses and then join them next week for 103 and 104. And Jacob will drop a affiliate code that you can use to sign up and learn about the Skillful Talent Series by taking the online learning option, full self-guided. And like I said, we are really blessed with the funding from our philanthropy donations to be able to provide this for free for partners. So check it out, see if it's of interest, and if it's something you want to offer to your members, please reach out to us. We can also create an affiliate code for your local area if that's an approach that you want to take. And with that, we'll open up for Q&A. Please drop any questions you have.
I mean, if you have a question you would rather ask verbally, please feel free to go ahead and just raise your hand. I'm happy to unmute you so you can ask that question to Corine or someone from the Skillful team. Richard, I see your hand is up. I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute you.
Hi, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Richard. I'm in London, as you can tell. It's now night here. I'd just like to ask this. It's about this issue that skills are simply a measure of basically people being able to express their competency and their capability. And it strikes me that what we're trying to do is to get beyond qualifications, which are basically outsourcing to somebody else the responsibility for choosing our staff. Getting beyond skills which they may already have, but to actually find people who have real capability, but may not have, probably haven't been given the opportunity to have this, develop that capability into a skill set. And one of the things we're struggling with here in London is how do we reach the hard to reach communities who have capability, but haven't even started down the process of turning it out into a skill. I mean, does this help us?
I'd say one great thing that the Skillful team has done is not only is there the business side, but they've also partnered with the workforce side in a coaching core to help individuals through the workforce development system better communicate and develop their skills and to create resumes really that are skills resumes. So I think there's that part, there's the business side, which you're hearing about today, but there's also the coaching core that helps the individuals in that development of the skills and also the communication of their skills. I think that's the key there. The other thing is that within the series, something that I find very fascinating is when you get into this and you have to do like the interview, the candidate selection process and the interview process, the way you restructure a skills-based hiring interview really gets down to even people that didn't realize they had it before, really allows them to express and convey that they have the skill. Whereas our traditional interview, the way you say it, you assume the person has that skill. You're telling them they have it. But in a skills-based hiring situation, when you refocus it, tell me about a project you managed and all the steps you went through. It allows them to communicate it in a way that they may not have realized they did it in the past, and it gives them that opportunity to really express a skill differently. And I think it's opening up doors and allowing that communication and that ability to show skills they didn't know they actually had.
Yeah, I think just tacking on to what Corine said, I think it's a dangerous assumption to assume that people who are marginalized in our societies, disabled people, racially diverse people, don't have the skill sets just because they haven't had the same type of access to education or job titles. So the goal here, and this is what we're seeing from the results of businesses hiring, is you hire very much a staff that's a lot more diverse because we're recognizing that skills are learned through navigating challenging systems and whatnot. And so I think that assumption about like, do folks even have the opportunity to develop skill sets might be incorrect. And this is a way for businesses to recognize where skills are coming from, regardless of if they're tacked to education and whatnot.
And to add on veterans, I mean, I work with, when a veteran comes out of the service, the way they talk about what they did in the service is very different than what the civilian world talks about. So they may not see what they did as a direct tie and a skill that would have been on the job description or asked in an interview. But being able to talk through what they did while they were in the service may actually be exactly what that business needed. And so using that skills-based approach gives that veteran an even bigger opportunity to show they're qualified for the position. So it has so many transferable areas. And again, we're not just assuming they know that name, we're giving them that opportunity to be able to express it.
Awesome. I think, Corine, there's another question in the chat that might be greatly served by your insight.
So the question is, how does this work between your chamber and your local workforce board? How does it work between your local workforce board? Because career training or job postings is typically what our workforce board does. So I'm actually the chair of our local workforce board. So we participate very closely with our workforce board. One of the things that we prioritized in our area is that there's no wrong door. Whoever you talk to, whether it's the chamber or the workforce board or the school district or the community college, we've done all this together. So you're going to get the same answer. So we are the skills-based hiring trainer on the business side, but the workforce board is the candidate. They're doing the job coaching piece of it. So we work together. We bring them in during the trainings to talk about how the workforce center can support the businesses a little bit more clearly. So we bring them into the training, but we're very coordinated in everything we do. We actually meet monthly as what we call a talent collaborative in our area, because we believe that if we're in alignment, businesses are going to feel the alignment of the workforce system in our area. So it's one of the other collaborative pieces that we do in our area.
Yeah, and just to add to this from perspectives of other communities we work in Colorado Springs, for instance, the chamber doesn't have the capacity to have on-staff support for businesses, but we've worked with the workforce center there and have trained 11 people on how to write skills-based job postings. 2 are going through the ability to actually host workshops. And then the chamber then becomes a hub for people to go to. And that partnership is really key. And so local partnerships, figuring out who has capacity, who's the best to play what role, is a really kind of key approach to making sure that you have a good community strategy.
Yeah, I think another example, Trevor, is in Denver. The Denver Chamber didn't have the capacity to run these trainings, but they partnered with the local small business development center who had access to consultants and trainers. And so the local chamber, the Denver Chamber, brought, their members to the table. They said, let's form a partnership where we can bring the chambers, the employers, we have access to them. You provide the training as a small business development center and provide the one-on-one consulting. So they work together. Part of that, which we would have never expected to happen, but just because of the nature of the partnerships, they host monthly meetings with smaller work groups. And one of them is full of training and workforce providers. They saw a connection of where employers should be aligning with training providers, so that training providers aren't just providing training that's not aligning with what employers need. And they made that connection. And that was a very skills-based connection after the employer realized, okay, I know what I need in my job posting. I no longer need the degree. I need access to other training providers. So they started searching for their candidates, not just through a 4-year college, but through the local area technical college that provided a very specific training that filled their need. And it created a brand new talent pipeline for them. And it all happened because they attended that training and started getting more involved. So just another way of looking at how you can create that partnership if you're not the main convener, or how you can bring together an ecosystem of partners to start to create that change to help your employers. So you help your businesses and obviously help your job seekers in your local area, right? That's one of the main goals.
Great. Well, we are at the end of our time today, which has gone quickly with so much great information. So I would like to thank our friends at the Markle Foundation and Skillful for being here today, for sharing the great work that you do. So Jacob and Trevor, thank you for presenting. And Corine, thank you for bringing that chamber perspective and for sharing the great work that you've been doing in Boulder. Just remember, if you're interested in connecting further, just put your information into that short survey monkey, and we will work with our friends at Skillful to figure out some next steps. But thanks for joining us this afternoon. We will post the recording on ACCE's website, and we look forward to seeing you at a future program.
Thanks, everyone.